we are discussing that we're going to have a joint refinery in Tanga to benefit all of us.
Sasa tupokuwa tunaongea ndani kule, nilimbana Ruto. Kaambia umekwenda kutangaza refinery Tanga, mbona mimi sijui? Hasa atasema mwenyewe pale kwa nini katangaza.
Nimeambiwa ya kwamba tangazo letu kwamba tujenge refinery pale Tanga imewakera kiasi. Lo, ningejua ningetangaza hiyo refinery ijengwe Mombasa.
Imagine you travel to your neighbor's house. You know, an official visit, red carpet, flags, motorcade, the works. And your neighbor, in front of cameras, in front of their own parliament, turns to you and asks, why did you announce plans for my house without telling me? Not a small house, a multi-billion-dollar infrastructure project. On their soil, in their city, announced by you in your country, to their media without their knowledge. This, unfortunately, is not a hypothetical. This happened last week between two sitting presidents, between two sitting heads of state on international television. And it is not the first time, because the man in this story has now done some version of this, announcing outcomes before reaching them, declaring consensus before confirming it, committing other people's countries to plans they haven't agreed to at least 4 separate times since he took office. We have the receipts for all 4. This is the Kenyan week that was, and I'm your host, DY. By the time this episode is done, you will have watched William Samoei Ruto lose his own government's foreign policy live on camera 4 times, and you will understand exactly why it keeps happening. Let's start with the most recent one, because it is still, fresh, warm, still vivid in our brains. April 28, 2026, President Ruto is at the African Infrastructure Summit in Nairobi. He has a microphone. He has an audience that includes Nigerian oil baron Aliko Dangote and Uganda's Yoweri Museveni. He announces confidently, publicly, in detail that Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, and South Sudan have agreed to build a joint oil refinery. Location? Tanga, Tanzania. Scale? Billions of dollars. Status? Done deal. 1 week later, Ruto lands in Dar es Salaam for a formal state visit. And Tanzanian President Samia Suluhu Hassan, aka the dictator, at the Kenya-Tanzania Business Forum, in front of assembled dignitaries and rolling cameras, says this. While we were speaking inside, I asked Ruto, you went ahead and announced a refinery in Tanga which I was not aware of. He will explain to himself why he made that announcement. Imagine. She did not say, we have questions about this. She did not even say, we would like to discuss the terms. She said, he will explain to himself. That is not diplomatic language. That is public dressing down, delivered in Swahili, so there would be zero ambiguity about what was being communicated. And Ruto's response, you ask? I have been informed that my decision to announce the building of a refinery in Tanga has not sat well with you Tanzanians. If I knew, I would have announced that a refinery would be built in Mombasa. That feels like, an egg on face moment. That is your defense? That you would have pointed the finger at a different country? These are not 2 children arguing over who started it. These are heads of state, one of whom just suggested publicly that Tanzania should be grateful to have been selected as a location of a unilaterally announced investment project. Because the following day, addressing Tanzania's parliament in Dodoma, only the second Kenyan president ever to do so, Ruto told Tanzanian MPs this. The good people of Tanzania, you are very lucky that we are discussing how to build a refinery in Tanga. Imagine, to the Tanzanian parliament in Dodoma. You are lucky. Mr. President, with all respect, you announce a bilateral project for someone else's country without telling them. You are not doing them a favor. You are describing your own error. Here's what you need to understand. This is not just, a bad week in Dodoma. This is a pattern that started on the first day of his presidency, the very first day. And we are going to go all the way back to day one. September 14, 2022, the tweet that erased 50 years of foreign policy.
Through his Twitter account, President William Ruto said that Kenya will continue to support the proposal to empower the people of Western Sahara to choose to be an independent nation or cooperate with Morocco.
It was very unfortunate of the president, essentially to go against the position of the African Union. Kenya itself, having fought physically to decolonize, cannot then be part or party to a new form of oppression of one country or another.
Sentiments by Macharia Munene, an international relations analyst, emanate from a message that President Ruto posted on his Twitter yesterday and later deleted. The message indicated that Kenya has revoked the Sahrawi recognition as a nation and will begin to wind down its presence in the country.
There is confusion in the presidency. And the people who advise the president are confused. And the president also appears to be confused. The reflection within a short time showed that the president had made a mistake.
William Ruto was inaugurated as Kenya's fifth president on September 13, 2022. At that inauguration, seated among the dignitaries at Kasarani Stadium was Brahim Ghali, the president of the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic, or the SADR, Western Sahara. Kenya had recognized the SADR for decades. It was not a new or controversial position. It was established policy aligned with the African Union, which also recognized the SADR since 1982. Kenya's own ambassador had presented credentials to the SADR's government just months earlier, explicitly reiterating Kenya's solidarity with the Sahrawi people's right to self-determination. The morning after this inauguration, Ruto met Morocco's foreign minister, Nasser Bourita, at State House. That afternoon, from his presidential Twitter account, he posted this: Kenya rescinds its recognition of the SADR and initiates steps to wind down the entity's presence in the country. Imagine. A tweet later deleted. Day one of the presidency, one tweet. 50 years of Kenya's foreign policy reversed because a Moroccan minister had visited that morning. The SADR protested immediately. Algeria, where SADR's government in exile operates, was furious. Analysts noted Kenya was now the only African country to have publicly sided with Morocco against a foreign African Union member state. And then the tweet was deleted. No explanations, no press statement from State House, silence. Kenya's foreign ministry issued a clarification 2 days later, confirming the country would still maintain diplomatic relations with the SADR and continue supporting its right to self-determination, which means the head of government unilaterally announced a historic foreign policy reversal, and his own foreign ministry had to publicly contradict him to restore the actual policy. Imagine. Later analysis by regional think tanks, including the Institute of Security Studies, noted the probable trigger. Morocco is a major phosphate and fertilizer producer. Ruto had promised Kenyan farmers cheaper fertilizer in his campaign. The Moroccan envoy arrived bearing that very promise. And so, apparently, a 50-year diplomatic position got traded by a tweet for a fertilizer conversation that was probably not even finalized. We are calling this the fertilizer diplomacy incident. The man tweeted away a UN-recognized nation's diplomatic status within 24 hours of his own inauguration, and then his foreign ministry had to come in and clean it up. That was year one. Let's keep going. March 2024, the EAC consensus that Somalia never agreed to. Kenya put its full diplomatic weight behind Raila Odinga's bid to chair the African Union Commission. Legitimate campaign, serious candidate. Kenya lobbied very, very hard. They traveled widely, worked the phones. And in March 2024, speaking to the East African Legislative Assembly in Nairobi, President Ruto made a clear public, definitive declaration. We have sat down in the spirit of EAC, consulted as head of states, and agreed to front one candidate. One candidate. EAC-wide consensus. East Africa speaking with one voice, except for one little big problem. Somalia, an EAC member since March 2024, had already nominated its own candidate, Fawzia Yusuf Adam, Somalia's first female foreign minister and deputy prime minister. And Somalia had not agreed to step aside. When Raila's official campaign launch was hosted at State House, Nairobi in August 2024, most EAC heads attended and endorsed. Uganda, Tanzania, Rwanda, South Sudan, Burundi, DRC, all present. Somalia's president? Conspicuously absent. Somalia later officially confirmed it was backing the Djibouti candidate Mohamed Yusuf instead of our very own late Raila Amolo Odinga, which means when Ruto announced unanimous EAC consensus, Somalia had not agreed. When Ruto hosted the regional endorsement, Somalia was not there. When it came to the vote, Somalia voted elsewhere. Raila unfortunately did not win the AU Commission chairmanship, and sadly, Kenya could not call it a win. But the declared consensus was not the real consensus. And one member of the bloc Ruto was speaking for was at the very moment, backing someone else. March 2025, the peace facilitators list that SADC didn't sign off on. By early 2025, Eastern DRC was in crisis. M23 rebels backed by Rwanda had taken Goma, the largest city in eastern Congo. Hundreds were dead. 2 million had been displaced. The region was on the edge of a wider regional war. Kenya, as EAC chair, was at the center of mediation efforts. Ruto was co-chairing joint EAC and SADC summit with Zimbabwe's president Mnangagwa. There was real work happening. Ahead of a key EAC SADC ministerial meeting in Harare in March 2025, Ruto's office released a draft list of proposed peace facilitators for the Eastern DRC peace process. The list featured former President Uhuru Kenyatta, Nigeria's Olusegun Obasanjo, and Ethiopia's Haile Mariam Desalegn. The document bore both EAC and SADC insignia, presenting it as jointly endorsed by both blocs. The problem? SADC had not endorsed that list. The document had not been seen or had not been the SADC's double troika, its senior officials or its extraordinary summit. It was released before any of those consultations actually occurred. So, SADC's reaction in Harare was quiet, but it was pointed. The bloc pushed back on the list and proposed an expanded, more regionally balanced panel that reflected gender and linguistics diversity, not present in the original Kenyan proposed draft. The final facilitators list, formally adopted at a joint virtual summit on March 24, 2025, included additional names from SADC's side that had not been in Ruto's original document. Translation: Kenya announced a joint outcome before the joint process had actually run, and the other bloc had to quietly revise it. 4 incidents, 4 separate regions of this continent, all with the same structure. The announcement comes first, the agreement comes later, or doesn't even come at all. The question is why, and the answer is actually simpler than you think. Let us be precise about what is actually happening here. This is not a story about a president who does not understand foreign policy. This is a story about a president who applies domestic political logic to international diplomacy. And those two things, sadly, are not the same. In domestic politics, you can announce the deal before it is signed. The announcement creates pressure. The pressure brings the coalition together. Kenyans have watched this for 30 odd years. A politician claims a bloc is united, and the bloc, not wanting to be seen as the one who broke the ranks, falls into line. That logic has a name. It's called fait accompli politics, and it works domestically most of the time. In diplomacy, it sadly doesn't work because the parties you're announcing outcomes for are sovereign governments. They have their own foreign ministries, their own parliaments, their own publics, and when you announce a deal on their behalf that they have not confirmed, you're not pressuring them into agreement. You're giving them a very public reason to push back. The costs are real. Let us be specific about what each incident actually costs. You know, the SADC tweet, Kenya's foreign ministry was forced to publicly contradict the head of government within 48 hours of his taking office. The very first signals Kenya sent about its foreign policy credibility under new leadership was an immediate institutional contradiction. That takes years. To repair. The EAC consensus claim Somalia's absence from the Raila's endorsement was visible to every other African Union member state watching at a campaign lounge. Kenya had declared a bloc standing behind one candidate. One bloc member was standing elsewhere. The gap was public. And perhaps it also contributed to Raila Odinga losing the bid to become the AUC chairman. The DRC Facilitators list. You know, SADC or SADC is a major bloc. Its members include South Africa, Tanzania, Zimbabwe, three of the most significant diplomatic players in Southern and Eastern Africa. Releasing a document with their insignia before they agreed to it is not just premature. It is a claim of authority that was never ever granted. And finally, that Tanga Refinery. Tanzania is Kenya's largest bilateral trade partner within the East African community. Bilateral trade hit $860 million in 2025. Entering a state visit with the host president already publicly annoyed because you announced an investment project in her country without telling her is not a strong foundation for that relationship. None of this required malice. None of this required ignorance. What it required was a habit. No, move fast, talk fast, let foreign ministry clean up later. And the foreign ministry has, in at least two of these four cases, had to do exactly that. Kenya's historical diplomatic capital is real. Nairobi is a UN hub. The country has run serious continental interventions across decades, but capital is not a fixed deposit. It is a current account. Every time a foreign head of state publicly corrects your president's statements, you make a withdrawal. So, here is where we land. In 2022, a tweet dismantled 50 years of Kenya's foreign policy on Western Sahara. The tweet was deleted. The policy was restored by the foreign ministry, and the president offered no explanations. In 2024, a declaration of the East African community-wide consensus on the African Union Committee chairmanship turned out not to include one of the EAC's own member states. Somalia voted differently anyway. In 2025, a peace facilitators list for the DRC process was released bearing SADC's insignia before SADC had agreed to it. The final list looked different. And in 2026, an oil refinery was announced in Tanga, in someone else's country, on someone else's soil, without telling the someone else. The president of that country then had to correct the record in front of everyone and the cameras. The thesis is not malice. The thesis is not incompetence. The thesis is a man who has spent his entire political career moving fast and talking fast and winning consistently in domestic politics by doing exactly that, has brought the same operating style to a space where it does not actually translate. And when it doesn't translate, the foreign ministry mops up. The partner government issues a correction. The bilateral meeting becomes awkward. The summit has a gap where a member state used to be. The question, for Kenyans, for the region, and for every country watching Kenya exercise continental ambitions is a simple one. How many withdrawals can we afford before the balance runs out? I'm DY. This was the Kenyan week that was. Receipts of our vibes always. And before I leave, I want to bring it home and actually speak about, we've gone through 4 instances, but all of them abroad. All of them chipping away at our foreign policy that has been built for many years back. And now, if you take your time and think about all the broken promises that have been made by this very president domestically, in the next 6 months, in the next 4 months, tumetenga, tumepanga, tutafanya, all those nitty-gritty little promises that he makes without ever having the intentions of keeping up, and saying that he's allocated finance, like what he's allocated the Nithi River Bridge, 50 million, 1 billion, all these grandeur announcements without following through sits as one of the main reasons as to why this current president has lost the trust of his own people. If he asks why we are not happy with what he's doing and why we keep on chanting one term, please do not be afraid to remind him that his promises have lost merit and cannot stand their own weight, locally and internationally. And like we always say, receipts of our vibes always. Again, I've been your host, DY. And if you like what we're doing, we urge you to, subscribe, like, share, hit the notification bell, and we will continue to produce as much of this type of content. And please, we beg that whoever is watching, and I can tell that you're watching, but most of you are not subscribed, please carry out the subscription because it helps the algorithm. And please share it to your friends and everyone else around you. Like we always say, Barakatele, and have yourselves a lovely, lovely day, night, or afternoon, or evening, wherever you are. Again, I'm your host, DY, and Kwaherini.